Justin Giebler. This is an interview that's taken quite a while to set up, but finally our schedules have aligned and the stars have aligned, and we were able to do this tremendous short interview. We might cover more topics in the future, but this one will be entirely about mental health, autism, and how it is aided or symptoms have been reduced through the carnivore diet. So, firstly, Justin, would you like to outline your reason for starting the carnivore diet and what happened in the past?
Yeah, hello, hi everybody. Thank you for having me on, of course, Jonathan. I'm a huge fan, love your work. Yeah, so how did I get here? Really quick, I was ill as a child. I struggled with asthma, um, throat infections all the time. Over here in the States, they have amoxicillin for kids, which is amoxicillin, red dye, and sugar, and it's this bright pink little drink. You take like 2 teaspoons a day or something like that until the infections goes away. So I practically lived off that stuff because I would get infections 2, 3, 4 times a year. And then when I was 12 and 13 entering puberty, I graduated because then I got to sinus infections. So I got to go get amoxicillin pills 2, 3, 4 times a day. Not day, but incidents throughout a year, 2, 3, 4, 5. So every couple of months, every 3 months, seasonal, every time the weather changes. So I also had a bout of gastritis. I somehow at one point caught mono and was taken out of school for 2 weeks. So just stuff like that. I remember in mornings being really nauseous and having a problem, like cyclical vomiting in the morning was also an issue as a child. So all these things that I didn't really, no one really pieces it all together, right? And as I got older, my health kind of just continued to decline. And when I was 20, I got diagnosed with severe chronic migraines. For those that don't know, migraines are just, at least layman's understanding, is these severe chronic headaches, essentially, typically on one side of the head, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to sound, to touch even, but you can have vertigo with it. You can have tiredness, yawning, even almost like mania with it. It can get really intense and a lot of different symptoms, as with many neurological disorders. So I was diagnosed with, like as I said, the chronic severe migraines. And so I'm 20 at this time, and they give me the rescue medication, what's it called, suppressant medication to keep them from happening as many times as they were, because I was getting them daily, essentially daily, if not every other day. Essentially, it got to the point where I was taking my rescue medication so much that my neurologist sat me down and she's like, look, you're going to get seizures by the time you're 40. And I was like, okay, this stuff's bad news. I already knew it was bad news, but I don't want seizures. That's so much worse than the migraines, right? So she kind of turned me on to the idea of diet and supplements. I did eventually see a naturopath within a couple of years or something like that. So I'm like 23, 24, see a naturopath, have food allergy tests done, get put on a whole host of, like I was taking like 14 supplements, like 14 pills a day, like fish oil, coenzyme Q10, magnesium, a couple other things. So I was on all different kinds of stuff. And she put me on a gluten-free paleo diet. So I was dairy-free, gluten-free at the time as well. She's like, just do stir fries with brown rice and lots of veggies and fish and things like that. Now, doing all that stuff helped, but I was still getting a migraine once, twice a week. But that was better than every day. So diet had something to do with it. And I essentially stayed paleo for a good 6, 7 years. So from like 23 to 30, basically. Now we could fast forward to 30, and I am working on my graduate degree in psychology. I'm working part-time the best that I can, still dealing with my condition, popping a ridiculous amount of supplements every day. Um, and I was I was happy with that quality of life. I thought, you know what, this is okay. It's not perfect, but if I don't ever get better than this, I will learn to live this way, And then I got in a really bad car wreck. I was in a 2010 Toyota Corolla. I was hit by a big SUV, smashed my entire back end practically into my back seat, essentially. And the lawyer I got for the case said it was the worst rear end he had seen in his 2 decades of practice. So that had me all kinds of messed up. And the migraines were just, they went back to like daily again, you know. And so I was in so much pain. So, like most people, when you're dealing with something, you turn to the internet because I was like, I wonder what other people are doing for migraines now. I hadn't really done a whole bunch of research and stuff. And I fell into the work of, or discovered the work of Angela Stanton and her migraine protocol. She wrote a book called Ending the Migraine Epidemic, if I remember right. It's been a while since I've read her book. I got the book, got in touch with her, got in her Facebook group, and it turned out to be a low carb protocol. So he says to completely get rid of sugar, grains, all grains, not just gluten-free grains. It keeps some veggies and things like that as well. And then, so I started with that. You increase your salt because, in her theory, migraines are a sodium channel disorder in the brain. So basically, the idea is that those with what she calls migraine brain also might be known as ancient brain, aka might also be the autism brain. I truly believe all these might be actually the same biological brain, just expressed in different ways. Um, and basically what happens is, with the neurons and the jumping, the so-called migraine brain burns through sodium quicker than average people or other people. So basically the brain kind of runs out of energy, runs out of steam. You get these channel blocks with the sodium building up, which causes a cascade effect through the mind or the brain, ultimately through the body, which is why the symptoms are so varied. And so her idea is increase the salt so that your brain has enough sodium to run on throughout the day. During stress, you increase more, and you also balance with sodium as well. I'm not going to go through her whole protocol, and also the idea that eating carbohydrates and sugar also messes with your body's absorption of sodium and other minerals as well. So overall, it's a bad idea to keep the carbs and everything in. Now, roll back 1 year before that, I'm in the psychological field. And so I did discover the work of Jordan Peterson and Michaela Peterson. So I was aware of the carnivore diet, but at the time, to me, my protocol was working for me, and I was so scared to mess with it that I was like, even though I really want to try this, it sounds like it might really help. I didn't until I got in that car accident and then found Angela Stanton's work. Now, the way I actually ended up carnivore was that I saw people in her group talking about ZC and zero carb was like one of the things. I was like, and CD, right? Carnivore diet. But back then I didn't know what they were talking about, right? And then I'm like, what is everyone talking about? Why is everyone saying ZC and CD? And they're like, oh, that's zero carb and the carnivore diet. And I was like, oh, I know what that is, because her original protocol, you have to track like your carb macros and your fat macros to your protein macros and everything like that. And I could never get the keto macros right. I was always off in some area and I was becoming frustrated. But then like this other way just seemed so much simpler to me, to just like eat meat. That way you hit that level of ketosis more or less automatically, and then your body can begin to metabolically heal. So I went carnivore, and they're like, oh, just 50% fat, 50% protein to start, adjust your potassium to sodium levels, and you're pretty much off to the races that way. And that's pretty much how I started. Now, just like most people, it is a weird adjustment. Now, I was used to already saying no to ice cream, most sugars and things like that, because I was paleo for 6 years. And I think that really helps when coming to this diet. If you already have a practice and another non-standard way of eating. So I already had that skill. But for a time, I had dated a vegan. And so I was told, and I watched Fat, Sick, Nearly Dead. I watched Fork Over Knives. So before hearing about the carnivore diet, I was actually trying to move more towards plant-based, actually. So I'd gone through a plant-based phase as well. Now trying to go vegan, gluten-free, God bless you, because that is a ridiculously difficult way to go about your life. Um, and uh, so I thought veggies were good. I was used to the variety, eat the rainbow. I swallowed all the stuff, right? And I had, so the way I started out was steaks with zucchini and squash, like yellow squash. That's what I did, and mushrooms because they tasted good or whatever. So that's kind of how I started cooking. And then I just remember like a couple of weeks after that, I know under a month, uh, the my vegetables went bad. Like the mushrooms went bad, and like the squash went bad, and the zucchini went bad, and I was like, oh, I guess I just won't buy them anymore, and just haven't really bought a vegetable since, and haven't really felt the need to. Um, and now the first month of carnivore was hell. Now, I think it was hell for two reasons. Obviously, changing my diet somewhat drastically, but also, hey, I had just been in a horrific car accident, right? So I was having like migraines every day, exhaustion. I was sleeping 2 hours a day, taking naps, so it was rough. But I just remember towards the end of the month, I had like 10 minutes of clarity, of peace, of focus. And I had never felt that before. Like, never in my life. I don't remember ever having a feeling of peace and clarity and energy. Um, and so I was like, whoa, that's different. That's really weird. Okay, I feel like something's happening here that I'm going to understand later, but I'm definitely going to keep this up, you know? And it started out really gradually that way, where like I remember a week after that, it was like an hour where I just had a ton of energy, clarity. I felt at peace with myself and not a lot of body aches. And like, it just kind of kept going and going and going. And it took a few months before I had like an entire day where I felt that way. And that was like, whoa, like what, like every time it just surprised me. And the migraines gradually got better. And there were some interesting changes with that as well. Um, but the progression, and I distinctly remember, I went to San Francisco to visit a sister and some family, because I have family that lives up there. And I just remember passing by a mirror and looking at myself and having self-confidence for the first time in my entire life. And all of that, I think, to the carnivore diet, and it continues to this day. And all that, I think, to the carnivore diet, because I'd been to therapy, I had been on psychotropic medication. I had done the meditational retreats. I'd done the deep breathing. I'd done the cognitive behavioral therapy. I mean, I was working on my master's graduate degree in psychotherapy, right? And yet, just constant anxiety, depression, sadness, darkness, PTSD, just forever haunting me, and thinking that just surviving, not thriving, and with migraines, it really is, it's okay. The disease itself is not fatal, but the emotional and mental and social toll that the illness takes on you is fatal. I remember I was looking up, okay, what are the future of people with migraines? And so many people just go on disability, or, they're also known as suicide headaches for a reason, right? And man, so I'm really passionate about talking to people about migraines, mental health, because that's my struggle. I don't really have a huge body composition story. Before Carnivore, I was skinny fat, of course. I was 154. Funny thing is, when I started Carnivore, I was eating 3 meals a day, and I dropped down to 132 pounds eating 3 meals a day. And all that I think was just inflammation, and then just probably, obviously some of that's water weight, but all kinds of seed oils, oxalates, who knows, right? But like I lost 20 pounds eating 3 meals a day, which is like crazy if you tell anyone else that. And then I started hitting the gym. I slowly gained 10, 15 pounds of muscle back, you know so that's kind of my story in a nutshell. Obviously there's a lot in between that, but that's the long and short of it. If you have any questions or anything you'd want me to go more into with that.
Yeah, that's incredible. I won't talk about myself too much, but
Mm-hmm.
I can say I can relate to you a lot in that regard, especially about medications, the supplements, trying all the other remedies to try and get yourself in a better place. Um, yeah, you're right. Like my body pain, my spine is different to your pain. Yours is in your head. But that does take such a toll on your mental health. It's horrendous. Like maybe 18 months prior to this exact interview,
Mm-hmm.
I was in a horrendous state. I was in the darkest place you could possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrendous. So I just want to speak to people like you just about this sort of thing. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about specifically was the migraine aspect of it. So you said about the protocol. So you said about getting the sodium potassium levels right. Like what else came into it? Were there other things outside of diet that sort of improved the or reduced the symptoms of the migraines?
So you mean before doing her protocol, or are there other things that she recommends? Sorry, I'm a little unclear on the question.
Yeah, it's my fault for rambling. Um,
No.
the question is, what have you found most effective in terms of reducing migraines? So it could be either diet or any other remedy that you can think of.
So certainly diet. I think diet is the most important thing. Now, I consider myself migraine essentially free. Do I get the occasional one from time to time? Yeah, usually because I haven't been sleeping or there's some emotional thing happen, because life still happens even though you're carnivore, right? So my remedies when I'm having an acute attack is, so there's the ice beanie, which I absolutely love. They sell that on Amazon, and they also have a website. That I'll put on one of those. I certain smells and like magnesium oils and things like that can also seem to be helpful. Increasing salt, having some potassium through food also does help, and that is part of the protocol. But yeah, I had done a lot of different supplements and things for migraines before, and some stuff would help for like a month or two. And I think either the body adjusts or you get used to it, or maybe you have to up the dosage or something. But carnivore, or a ketogenic carnivore diet, however you want to phrase it, is I think the one of the only ways to get lasting migraine relief, as far as the intensity going down and the number of acute episodes going down as well. I believe it is the diet. You've got to get rid of the grains. You've got to get rid of sugar. I suggest getting rid of plants, because I think oxalates also mess with migraines as well. So like something like coffee and teas, I tend to avoid, because I notice like 2 days later I'll get a migraine or some of the symptoms. And that's all personal choice. And I've seen people who don't even know about Angela's protocol just get rid of the grains and go carnivore, and their migraines resolve within 6 months. Mine took a good year and a half to 2 years, I'd say, before they truly, really resolved. Now, at the 1 year mark, I did throw away all my migraine medication, which was a really big step for me, because through the prescriptions you're only allowed like 9 pills or 9 patches or whatever it comes in, like a month. And so I had squirreled away like all this migraine medication, and I ended up just throwing it all in the trash, which I know you're technically not supposed to do, but that was a big step for me. And so that was July of 2020. that I did that, and I haven't taken any medication or anything like that. I avoid Tylenol, I avoid Advil, any of that stuff. I know they're all just garbage and terrible for you. Um, so does that answer your question? I don't know if I did or
It
didn't.
does, yeah. I think so. It's whenever I speak to anyone about any symptoms or what they find useful, it comes down to the carnivore diet and
Mhm.
some transmutation or permutation of that diet. So that brings me to my next question, which is, Justin, what is your current diet, or is it a bit flexible in that regard?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm 95% carnivore, and I've pretty much always been 95% carnivore. I carnivore with dairy. I like my cheese. Now I've gone through stints without dairy as well. Don't really notice a huge big difference, honestly. Um, but cheese to me is just a garnish when it comes to the carnivore diet. But I mean, I eat a variety of meats, seafood, eggs, ground beef. I love in a couple of your videos, you've talked about your love for ground beef. I love ground beef so much too. I could just munch on ground beef all day and be as happy as I can be. Um, I cook with tallow, butter as well, though. Yeah, so just all the animal kingdoms, I'm all about it. But the only time I really technically go off is at a restaurant or something. I might have like a French fry or three French fries or something like that. When I was on vacation with Tom, we pushed it pretty far as how far we could take it, you know, and all of us had times where we didn't feel our best, but it's so easy to just for us now, it's so easy to bounce back to the carnivore diet. Or hey, at worst, you fast for a day, day and a half, and you're pretty much back to where you were anyway. So I'm not really I know when I've pushed it too far, and I know when I need to clean things up. I just feel it in my body, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I went to a restaurant recently and I had, I think, a pizza or something. It's
Mhm.
not something I'd usually have, but the only other option on the menu that I probably could eat would be a burger. But those burgers weren't that thick. I get one of them and I pay as much money for that, minus the bun, minus the salad, minus the chip, all the other sort of stuff. So I thought, if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it properly and just have a pizza. And I know how much my body will pay back for that.
Mm,
So for me, it might be 2 days of not feeling quite 100%.
mm.
But that's life. It's your own thing that you accept to do, and you just get back on it the next day. And this kind of brings me to my next question. So, have you found over time that your symptoms of autism have improved with the diet? And do you think that certain things come into it a bit more than others, perhaps different nutrients or foods, perhaps?
Yeah, so funny thing is that I didn't know I was on the spectrum. Now I haven't been officially diagnosed, but um Tom's openly on the spectrum, right? And so he was one of the first people I ever talked to, hung out with in the carnivore community. And me and him are like brothers, pretty much, basically. Um, and talking to him and then meeting some other people that he knew were on the spectrum and stuff like that. Um, I took like some online tests or whatever, so who knows how valid. But speaking to them, being in the autistic community, it was like, oh, that makes childhood and teenagehood so much more sense. You know what I mean? Just it made a lot of things click into place for me. Um, Now the problem with that, and I guess what makes it difficult for me to answer your question, is that I didn't know I was autistic until I was already 6 months plus carnivore. You know, plus I had already so many other mental health issues before in my past that it's really hard for me to pinpoint a particular struggle, and especially with the migraines, because with the sensory symptoms overlapping so much with the autism symptoms of both migraine and autism, it makes it really kind of difficult for me to really kind of parse these out. Um, but yeah, I don't really have an answer because of the way that things happened for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I was professionally diagnosed.
Mm,
This is quite late in adulthood. Well, I'm 27 years old. I was diagnosed at 21, and I had the same experience as you. It definitely was quite a revelation, and it gave me quite a few ideas about how my childhood went the way it did. Um,
Mhm.
we can look back and think, would we still be, even if we knew this information before, we would still be the same people.
Mhm.
We were hardwired a certain way. So yeah, I was just thinking how it all applies to autism, really. And I know people have different kind of deficits, strengths, weaknesses, however you want to put it.
Mhm.
Um, you probably get this a lot. You probably get, Justin, you don't seem autistic. You seem normal. Um, but then I'm sure, like you said, there's these sensory issues that you struggle with. So, do you want to expand on that a bit? Because I think a lot of people don't realize how diverse the symptoms of autism are.
Yeah, so I think mine are definitely the issues with eyes, with the light and things like that. Sound, not so much. I'm a light sleeper more or less, so everything wakes me up at the night. So I've got, the sleep mask on. I've got a white noise machine. That's my kind of type. I know Tom's the opposite. He needs absolute quiet. So there's a difference. Some of us need noise to drown things out, and some of us need absolute quiet. Um, Also with me, taste and texture. Texture is a big one with me. So as a kid and as a teen, could never do Jello. The texture just always weirded me out. I could never eat Jello or any kind of gelatin, and there was just weird stuff like that. I think I do have hyper sensitivities because I think I'm a really good chef, and I've cooked for a lot of people, and a lot of people say my food's really good. And so I think I kind of have like that perfect palate thing going on where I can taste something and I could get like all the different spices or all the different flavors inside. And that's typically a thing of high star chefs. And I think high star chefs may also be on the spectrum because they're hyper focused on that one thing, right? This perfection of this meal with these certain mix of flavors. And I can look at a food or look at an herb and get the taste like in my mouth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. I'm trying to diversify some of my passions and interests at the moment. This current thing is like the YouTube, the videos, and
Mhm.
helping people. Essentially, my interests are around nutrition, and just see happens I can expand on that niche lots of different ways. So, what I know you're very much into psychology. Has it always been that way? Have you had other interests around that, like different?
I mean, I would say as a teen and as a child, it was more like anime and music. Was really more growing up. Yeah, I was a huge anime nerd, Dragon Ball Z, all that stuff. Wanted to go Super Saiyan, but I wasn't able to go Super Saiyan until I got on the carnivore diet. So there we go. Um, but music, I was a musician for a while, played bass guitar in a few bands in high school and things like that. So and then the psychology kind of came later. I was a massage therapist. I had a little massage shop. There was a fight with the owner or whatever. I just didn't feel intellectually stimulated as a massage therapist. Um, and so I decided to pursue a bachelor's degree in psychology. And I turned in my first paper and got an A. And like, not that I wasn't trying, but it just didn't seem hard. So I was like, oh, this isn't hard. I'll just keep doing this. I'm passionate about it. I love it. I think the profession itself has a lot of problems right now, and there's a lot of postmodernism has infected it a lot, unfortunately, and so the philosophies have been bent. I think there's people in the realm that are trying to correct that, though, so hopefully the psychological field will go through a correction. I also love philosophy though as well, so but I think you can't have psychology without philosophy, and you've got to know, because a lot of the theories and orientations have a groundwork of philosophy, whether it be more postmodernist, modernist, philosophies and psychoanalytics and things like that. And so you need that groundwork, I think. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that is missing, especially in this postmodern world. in the way of basically there is no reality. It's social constructionist. Everything we see or every way we interact with one another is socially constructed, and so thereby can be deconstructed and into perfect man, basically. That's the philosophy, unfortunately, running rampant through the psychological institutions at this time. What's funny being in the carnivore diet, that's why there's people that say, oh, it doesn't matter, you can be vegan or you can be carnivore. That is a social constructionist view, at least one of, because if you talk to some vegans or some plant-based advocates, what have you, they'll say, oh, you like meat because you were raised on meat, and that's why you like meat, right? It's socially inbound, it's socially accepted, etc., right? Completely forgetting evolution, and that no, the reason why meat was prized is because we realized that eating the meat made us the most healthy and optimal.
Brilliant. Yeah, I come from a background of quite restricted eating, and not in terms of like volume or amounts. It was more just I would only eat foods of a certain color,
Right.
so white or beige sort of foods like bread and chicken breast, things like that. So yeah, it's fascinating you saying about that. So if you could give any sort of maybe a couple of key takeaways for anyone watching this video, what would they be? Maybe in regards to even the migraines, autism, mental health, anything like that.
Yeah, so certainly don't give up. Start where you're at. Just try to incorporate more meat and fat. Try to get rid of the processed stuff. The vegetables and fruits, that stuff can come later. Hey, if you trade out sugar for honey, I think that's a step in the right direction. I'm very much about conscious eating. I don't care about what you eat. I care about your mental state and emotional state when you're eating and your reason for going to that food. That's why journaling can be so helpful. Where were you at in that moment before you made that choice of food? Okay, and I think also the stress of trying to follow a diet can be more damaging even if you eat the right food. And so if you can truly from a place of peace and calm go to the store, buy a slice of chocolate cake and eat it, and after eating the slice of cake have peace of mind, peace of soul, and peace of spirit, then good for you. You were able to consciously make your choice. And so I work with people that binge eat, I work with people with food addiction, several other addictions. And to me, addiction is just a runaway coping mechanism, right? And it's a ritual that they're actually ritualistic. And all you got to do to break addiction is to put a stopgap in the ritual and rewrite the ritual, you know? So like if every time before a person went to go get cocaine, they had to stop and do 25 push-ups, that would put a break and might feel good enough from the push-ups that they may not want the cocaine, you know, just different stuff like that. So distract yourself, do something different if you are struggling staying on a diet plan, and do the best you can. It's just about being better than yourself yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to the carnivore or keto, none of us don't try to eat it the exact way any of us do. That's the worst mistake. So many people try to do that. Oh, I saw themselves increase their fat to this or do that. It's like they're not you. Yes, we're very, very similar, but no one can tell you how to do this. Unfortunately or fortunately, it's your journey and you really have to figure it out for yourself. So trial and error, just keep working at it. We know the protein, we know the fat is good for you. We know the animal sources of nutrition is best for the human body. Other than that, we really don't actually know a whole lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I appreciate you talking about that as well, because oftentimes we talk about this way of doing the diet or that way, and it's like if your mindset is going elsewhere into a bad place when you're trying to follow a certain construct or concept of diet, your mental state is just going haywire, and that's not going to make you stick to the diet, and you're not going to get the
Mm-hmm.
benefits from it. So you have to be mindful of what you're doing and conscious of what you're putting in your gut.
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually spoken to someone about that before. That's brought that point up, so I appreciate you did. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. So hopefully we can do a round two of this at some point in the future.
Oh, yeah, I'd
Um,
love to.
yeah, brilliant. All right. Thanks very much for coming on, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.